And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we got some more new Capenna cards to talk about here. And I'm going to talk about the charms. For whatever reason, they decided to release the charms first, and they're doing it, sort of one day at a time. Whatever the reason is, I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. I thought I would talk about them specifically in a video because I think they are going to be really great in the format. Now, sort of unfortunately, this is a 3-color themed deck. So of course, all the charms are 3-color. So they're only going to go in decks that are 3-color or more. A lot of decks that could fit that though, right? 3-color combinations, I think, probably tend to be the most popular in the format overall, rather than, 2-color or 5-color or 4-color or whatever. A lot of 3-color decks out there. So these cards are going to see a lot of play. And I thought I would talk about them in order of how impactful or how good I think they are in the format. So let's get to the first one. Now, I'll just say it is a little tough to rate these all. They're all pretty good. Okay, I don't want to say that any of these are bad. They're all fantastic. I think they're all going to see play in the format for sure, but I'm rating them on how useful I think all of the abilities are. I really love modal cards in Commander. That's why I think these are all great. You never know what your opponents are going to be doing, so being able to deal with different situations is fantastic. Capenna Charm for me is the least best of the 5. It's still really good, but it's at the bottom for me. So it's the Naya one, or the Capenna one, I guess. It's an instant, of course, and you can choose one. It deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. So creature or planeswalker removal, that's great. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample at the end of turn, or create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. So those are all very usable abilities. The only problem for me is that I find that all 3 of those abilities all fit into the same deck. So there probably is a lot of Naya decks out there because you want a very creature heavy deck. Give you more creatures even if you want them. So for me, I just feel like this one fits into a very specific type of deck. It's not nearly as versatile as all the rest are. Next up, Maestro Charm. This is the Grixis one, right? Red, black, and a blue. And of course, an instant. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So pretty good. I mean, looking at the top 5 cards and putting one into your hand for 3 mana, that's okay. It's not great. The fact that they go into your graveyard might be good if you're in a graveyard theme, might not. Each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Also pretty good, right? Though both of those abilities are always going to be usable in a commander game. They're just not super impactful. The life loss, life gain, I mean, Grixis doing life gain, I don't know how many decks that fits into. It's good. It's always going to be good. I just don't know if it specifically fits in any certain decks. Or you can deal 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker. So again, removal, 3 mana to deal 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker. You can't even hit a player with it. It's pretty good. It's not great. So all of those abilities are all very usable. You're never going to have a situation where you're not going to want to use at least one of them, but they're all, I find, a little less impactful than some of these other ones. Next up, we got Broker's Charm, the Bant one, green, white, and a blue. Once again, an instant, and target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So again, sort of removal a little bit, right? I mean, Bant already has pretty good removal, but it is a removal option. Dealing damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is typically going to be removal. It's not super versatile, but it is an option. Also, you can destroy target enchantment, and that alone is the reason I put this one a lot higher. You're always going to want to destroy an enchantment, right? There's always going to be a Smothering Tithe or Heuristic Study or some other really powerful enchantment in play that you're probably going to want to get off the board. You can use these other options, but I think a lot of the time it's going to be the destroy enchantment option that you're going to be using. And you can also just use this to draw 2 cards, right? If you're in a desperate situation and you need to look for an answer or something like that, maybe you want draw triggers, So again, all of these are very usable. You're always going to be wanting to use them in a commander game. The destroy enchantment one for me is what put this one a little bit higher. Next up, we got Riveteers Charm, black, red, and a green. So the Jund option, target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So this one is a sacrifice, which is good. I like that it is the highest. So they get to choose, but it's got to be the highest. It's creatures and planeswalkers. So you can get a planeswalker off the table if their planeswalker is the highest mana value. Usually getting the highest mana value creature is going to be the best. Not always, but a lot of times it is. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. Of course, that's always great. Is there any Jund commanders that specifically want to be doing this? I don't know. Of course, we have the commanders coming out from this set that maybe, I would imagine a lot of these charms will fit with certain commanders. So maybe there's an exile theme there in a Jund commander, but just, some impulse draw. And I particularly like, because this is an instant, exile top 3 cards of your library until your next end step. You can play those. So you can, on your opponent's end step, pay 3 mana, exile the top cards of your library, and then you untap on your turn and you have your whole turn to play those 3 cards. And if there's a land, right, this is play. So if you exile a land, it gives you a land drop, and then the other cards you can play as well. And then obviously exile target player's graveyard is also great, right? Again, another thing that you're probably always going to want to do in a commander game, and that can be a real lifesaver, right? Again, that's why I put this one a little bit higher, because that life-saving scenario for me is, all of this stuff is good, but look at that, my opponent's about to cast a Living Death and reanimate their whole entire graveyard, and I can at instant speed exile their graveyard. Everyone else still gets stuff back. They get nothing. So that can be I really like when charms, when modal effects have a lot of really useful stuff, but the one thing there can be a real game changer, which I really, really like. At the top for me is Esper Charm, though, and this is the Esper one, white, blue, and a black, instant, of course. Return target multicolored permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, of course, that's great. I mean, and if you're in an Esper deck, you're probably going to have a lot of stuff to choose from, particularly your commander, right? Maybe your commander is a mana value 3 or less permanent. So if your commander's mana value 3 or less, obviously it is a multicolored permanent. So that's going to be great in any deck. If I'm in an Esper deck, and I don't know how many Esper commanders there are that are 3 mana value or less, there's probably a few. I probably would auto include this in my deck just because it can get my commander out of my graveyard. However, we also have 2 more other really fantastic modes here. Counter target instant or sorcery spell. Gee, well, there's something you want to do in every single commander game, right? And again, that for me is what really put this one higher on the list, or top of the list, is there's always going to be the expropriate, or maybe the board wipe, or maybe the cyclonic rift that you're going to want to counter. Again, I think that's probably going to be the mode you're going to be using more than anything else. Also, destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Again, if for some reason you don't use those other 2 modes, you can also use this as creature removal if, again, you're in a pinch and you got to get one of your opponent's creatures off the table with mana value 3 or less. You're always going to want to do that. You might be in a tough spot with this card where you have it in your hand and you're like, well, it's early in the game and I really want to destroy my opponent's creature. Maybe their commander that is mana value 3 or less, but maybe someone's going to cast a board wipe in a couple turns, or maybe someone's going to cast, some really powerful instant or sorcery that I might want to counter, or maybe I want to get my commander out of the graveyard if it dies. Man, and there's just all the modes here I think are super fantastic and very usable. The downside of this card is that it's doing so much that you're going to have a tough time deciding when to use it. This might be the best charm we have now. I think it might be the best charm there is out there of all the charms that have ever been printed. It really is fantastic in a commander game. So for me, it's the best of the bunch. They're all great, though. Again, I want to reiterate that I think all these charms are great. I just happen to rank them in the order that I thought they were the most usable, the most versatile. Obviously, if you're in a very specific theme where some of these charms might fit, like the Capenna Charm might be really, really great if you're in a Naya super creature heavy go wide strategy. And all 3 of the modes there might really fit what you're doing. So maybe that is the best in your mind because it goes in your Rin and Seri deck or your Gured deck or something like that. Just on their face when you're not getting into specific themes. For me, I thought the Esper Charm was the best because all 3 of those modes are fantastic and you're always going to be wanting to use them in a commander game, right? So that's about it. Just thought I would talk about these charms specifically. Again, they released the charms first to sort of give us a taste of all these different guilds or gangs or whatever they're calling them. So interesting. I thought I would rank them and talk about them a little, get us a little excited about, like I imagine Wizards of the Coast is doing, trying to get us a little excited about this new set coming out. But of course, there will be more to come going forward. Looking forward to this set. It's an interesting one. I myself don't have any 3-color decks right now, so it definitely is a reason for me, depending on the cards that I see, if there's a commander that I find really interesting, it might be a great reason for me to finally put a 3-color deck together, but I guess we'll see. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.